delivering great presentations. And I realized when I named this presentation, it set kind of a high bar, and it was unintentional. However, this is a talk that I've given a couple times, and I will probably give a couple more times. So if you have feedback, if you want to make this an even greater presentation, please do rate the session and give me feedback afterwards. So my name is David Needham. Promise. There we go. And I work for Pantheon as an agency and community training manager. So part of my job involves going around to camps like this and going to agencies, delivering presentations and training to them, as well as creating the curriculum and helping to kind of run the training program. There's a number of things I enjoy here aside from public speaking, but public speaking is also a really important thing to me. So when I was younger, when I was teenage, where like the guys in my class and their voices were changing, I had sort of an embarrassing problem with my voice, and I didn't realize it at first, but I didn't speak normally compared to everyone else, and that was a little strange for me. My friends' voices would change, and as they're growing up, and mine isn't. And not only is mine isn't, but it was a little even different than normal. And I didn't realize it, but I started to hear from other people. I was like, "Oh man, why is your voice strange? Why are you talking like that?" And I wasn't even cognizant of it. But it made public speaking all the more difficult for me because everyone has stage fright at first. You step up and you're going to present, and you're hyper aware of everything that's happening in the room. You get very nervous, and people laugh, or people are whatever talking, and it's distracting. Now imagine you're hyper aware of yourself, something about yourself. In my case, my voice, which is kind of key to public speaking, and it made public speaking just very, very difficult for me. And it caused me, kind of like other problems that people have in their public speakers. They start to think, I'm a fraud. Like, I shouldn't be here. Why am I presenting on this topic? What do I have to actually contribute to this? And the people in the room that are here with me today, they secretly know it. They know that I don't have anything to contribute to this topic, and they know that I'm not a good presenter. And that just makes you feel really, really horrible. Well, I'm here today to tell you that that's not the way it is, and that's not the way that it has to be. There are ways to overcome that and become better presenters. Even if you're nervous about presenting, it's okay. This is kind of obvious, but one thing that you can do to improve your public speaking skills is just to practice. As you are creating your presentation, just taking time to run through the slides, taking time to make sure that your timing is correct. How much time are you spending per slide? How long does it take you to go through the entire presentation? It gives you a chance to go through the presentation from start to finish, and it gives you a chance to make corrections and practice. I can't believe how many people I've spoken to who have had presentations where they create the slides, and then that's kind of it, and they've never went through it from start all the way to the end. They might start, and then they fix something, and they go back, and they start, and they fix something, and then they go back. Just taking the time to be deliberate and say, I'm starting, I'm going to go all the way to the very end, gives you that whole sort of experience on presenting, and you have a better opportunity to fix things and make sure your timing is correct and all those other things. And then if you can get feedback from someone that you trust, if I can present in front of my friends or my colleagues, it gives you a chance to get real feedback about what they think is what you're saying. Is my message clear? Could I change my story? Should I give a better example or a better photo? What are some things that can improve my presentation? And ultimately, it's okay to, it's good to get feedback, but it's okay to disagree. It's okay, ultimately you need to go with what you feel like is right, and that's the way to go. And then this is a little bit of I don't want to get too like wishy-washy or too, believe in yourself, and it'll make it all better. But in a way, it's a little bit true. Imposter syndrome is real. People feel like they're imposters when they're presenting and when they're in a career and things like that. But the fact of the matter is, by the time that you're up here and presenting on a particular topic, you have put in more research than most of the people that haven't. Most of the people that are probably in the room right now. You've taken the time to organize your thoughts, to get stories or graphics or examples. You've put together a demo, especially at DrupalCon or WordPress events, or other sort of techie events. Those situations where you have a demo, you have a fully functioning piece of something that you're showing people, you probably know more about that than anyone else in the room. So you should not feel intimidated, even if the module maintainer is in the room with you at that time. He might know more than you, but that's okay. It's a great experience to kind of share. Everyone has a chance to learn from that experience. And so you really do know more than most people there, and it's okay to have, and speak with some authority and to be, positive and confident in your abilities. So when I was in 4th grade, I started playing the trombone. It was not very good, of course, because I was just starting out. But over time, through high school and college, I played trombone. I did the pep band. I did concert band. I did marching band. And I always remember like my first presentation, my first concert. We had practiced for months. We weren't very good at first, but we got better over time. And I practiced my part, and I did it perfectly. And it came time to do the concert, and I get up there. And I don't have a solo or anything, but man, I made a bad mistake. Like I played the totally wrong note. It sounded really bad, and I felt so embarrassed. And we wrapped up, we finished, and I went down, and I was like, dog with the tail between my legs. Like I felt really bad about it, and it turned out no one noticed. Like in with all of the everything else going on, nobody at all noticed that I made a mistake. Like, it was hyper aware to me because I knew I made a mistake. But this is true anytime that you're on stage presenting in front of people. Like, you might know that you make a mistake. You said something wrong. You missed a story. You missed an example. You played a wrong note. People probably don't know. People usually don't pick up on those things. And so it's better for you then to just keep going. Don't let that derail your presentation. Don't apologize. Don't say, oops, just a second, let me go back. Just keep going. Just go with the flow. Everything will be okay. They probably won't notice, and your presentation will be better because you just kept going. And then get excited. There's some psychology around kind of pumping yourself up and getting excited for things. And you can do fist pump, putting your hand in the air. You can kind of do the straw. You can do whatever. There's certain things you can do to get yourself excited about a presentation. So especially before a presentation or as you're preparing it, anything you can do to get yourself excited about the topic. It's something you're very passionate about or genuinely interested in. It makes you a better presenter, and it makes your presentation all the more interesting because your audience can often tell if you're really excited and interested in a topic, or if you're just kind of, it's okay. I'm here because it's fine, whatever. And they can tell. So the more you're excited you are, the better it is for your audience too. And the more presentations you can give, the more practice you can get in as a presenter, will make you a better presenter over time too. And it's kind of obvious, but if you have an opportunity to join, say, a local Toastmasters group where you can practice and they'll give you suggestions and they'll grade you based on how many tick words you use or how many mistakes you make or how on point you are or if you got all your points correct or whatever. They can help you improve in that way. And then, of course, if you have a local meetup or if you have local camps or other opportunities to give presentations, even opportunities at work, anytime you can present, take those opportunities, try it out. It'll make you a better presenter over time. So there is a local Austin Drupal users group. So I know many of us are from out of town, but if you are a local, I highly suggest joining the Drupal users group in Austin or wherever you are. Consider attending, checking out, see what the vibe is like. And I've been part of some organizing groups for Drupal user groups all over the country, and they often struggle to find people to present on anything. So if you have an interest in practicing, joining your local group, volunteering to present on whatever you're working on lately would be a really good topic to give. There are certainly some groups where there's a queue, it's a huge list of people that want to present and things like that, and that's a good problem to have. But more than likely, you're going to have many opportunities to present. And even if Drupal isn't your thing, on meetup.com and many other places, there's lots of other groups you can join where people share a common interest. That can be a really good place to practice your presentation skills. But ultimately, it goes a little bit back to the imposter syndrome. You feel like I am not a presenter. I don't have anything that any other people would find valuable about Drupal. What can I share that would be interesting? But the fact of the matter is anything. Like, what have you been working on lately? What are some websites you've been building? What are some modules you've heard about recently? Those are good topics to present on if it's something you're interested in. But then also, beginner topics. I think beginner topics are often overlooked because people, I've spoken to several people who have been site building with Drupal for a few years, and like, no, I'm not doing any cool development work, I'm not doing any cool theming work, like I can't present. It's like, well, do you know views? It's like, well, yeah, I do views and content types all the time, that's no big deal. It's like, well, there should be a beginner views presentation at just about every camp because it's a huge topic. It's fundamental to Drupal. And camps are a place where beginners who know nothing about Drupal come and learn Drupal for the first time. So beginner topics, super simple stuff that you would commonly overlook, are really important. So those are good topics to present at camps and local user groups and things like that. And if you become a beginner, a kind of a killer at beginner topics, that's a great inroads into things like speaking at DrupalCon, the even bigger, maybe more prestigious events to speak at. They require you to have previous speaking experience, and it's a bonus if you're suggesting that you propose a session for something that you've done already. They want to see that you have experience presenting and you're a good presenter. So anytime you can get experience doing those things in beginner topics, it's a good place to go. So I learned Drupal for the first time back in 2007. I was in college, and my instructor we had a class where we could kind of pick whatever CMS we want and build a website. I picked Drupal, and my instructor was really happy. He's excited about Drupal, but it was, we knew there was going to be a learning curve, and we got to the end, and the class was awesome. It was kind of a big game changer for me about learning Drupal, and I started experimenting with UberCart for this project. I built an e-commerce website, very, very simple, kind of went through the process of buying and selling things, and an opportunity came up to speak, to attend my first Drupal camp. It was Drupal Camp Wisconsin in 2008, and I had never spoken in front of a group before. I just learned Drupal like a couple months ago. I don't have any real-world experience with it at all, but I'm like, I guess I can try. I'll get out there. And my instructor encouraged me and said, UberCart is this new thing. It's new e-commerce. It's complicated. You've got this process working. That's a lot more than some people. He kind of encouraged me in the ways that I've been encouraging you guys, and he encouraged me to go. And so I presented. It was a great experience. It was a great introduction for me to the Drupal community. And like many Drupal communities, they were very encouraging and welcoming. And I was just a college student, and they were accepting, and that felt really good. So beginner topics are okay, is the point I'm trying to make. Like, it's okay if you are brand new to something, you can present on just about anything. And so then, jump ahead. So I just started working at Pantheon in October. And we had this big meeting for our team just a couple weeks after I started working there. And as the training manager, this is a position that we have not had before, brand new. We've just kind of done trainings before, but now my job is to come in and sort of organize and help make things better and more efficient. And I was tasked with making suggestions around improving our presentations. And so I did some research. I came up with a presentation to suggest changes to our presentation. And I finished my slides, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready. I'm really nervous because I'm coming into. I respect my Pantheon colleagues and stuff, and I don't want to be embarrassed by making a bunch of suggestions. Things I might be killing someone's baby by suggesting we make this change to our process. I might be costing people a lot of time and effort and energy to make these changes that I'm recommending. What if they don't appreciate that? What if they're very defensive? What if they poke holes in my plan? And I'm like, that's a great idea. I don't know. Well, I guess we're done with the presentation. What if it just doesn't work? And so I had a book that I'd been kind of researching for this. It's called Slideology. And Slideology has lots of really great points. I refer to this frequently in my presentation before in making these suggestions to improve our process. And Slideology helped encourage me with some of the things we talked about before. But in the next half of this presentation now, we're going to talk about creating slides. And I'm going to go through some of the examples that Slideology recommends. So first, when you're creating slides and you're thinking about what slides you want to, for your topic to create, it's very important to consider your audience. Who is actually going to be in your audience today? Is it going to be the business owner? Is it going to be 5 developers? Is it going to be project managers? Is it going to, who are you actually talking to? And so I didn't get a photo of us beforehand, but this was the last time I gave the presentation. This was my audience. So I'm saying right now, you guys are my audience. In my audience, I have my friend Board Game John. Board Game John is a talented project manager. He's currently looking for work, so if you have a need for a talented project manager, you should definitely talk to him. I know a few things about him. He enjoys playing board games. He's from Arizona. But ultimately, why does he care? Why does he care? He's my friend. He said he was going to attend, so he's probably showing me support. But why does he care about delivering great presentations? So John is looking for jobs, and he wants to be able to leave a good impression at interviews. He wants to be able to share his thoughts and ideas and stuff, and have that communication be clear and concise and really to the point. And he wants the employer to understand just what a good project manager he is so that they hire him. So this is an example of a persona. In this case, it's a specific persona to someone I know, but some of the key concepts of when you're thinking about your audience, creating a persona, is come up with a name. A real name is good. Come up with a photo, and this could be just, any stock photography thing that sort of represents that person, and then come up with some real examples of some things that they're about. They don't have to be relevant to the presentation at all. It's just something that give you an idea, sort of a look into that person's life, so that when you're creating your slides, you're thinking about well, is this something that John would appreciate? Would this point that I'm trying to make really stick with John, or would this kind of fly over his head, or be way too simple, or where does it fit? And so when you create a persona like this, it's just really good for kind of giving yourself a sanity check. And it doesn't take a ton of extra time when you're creating a presentation to think about who's going to be in your audience. Also, my coworker Tessa is in the audience today. So it's good to get more than one persona. I mean, if you think that you're only speaking to one type of person, you're probably a little too narrow. You probably have several groups of people that are in your presentation, whether you're at a workplace or at a camp. In this case, Tessa is my coworker. She's from Minnesota. She also enjoys playing board games. And why should she care about this presentation? Well, Tessa delivers trainings for Pantheon, and so she wants to make sure that her students clearly understand her lessons, and her points are getting across appropriately, and that she's a good presenter. So in both of these cases, if I wanted to come up with an example of something that would be appropriate for them, like I know them. Both of these people like board games, so let me come up with an example for something that has to do with board games. So here's just an example of something that will demonstrate sort of an evolution of creating new slides, the process of doing that. So I have a monthly board game night at my house. We invite our friends over, we play all the time. And we have our favorite games that we play on a regular basis. And so, same group of friends, same games, you start to come up with these strategies, right? It's like, I know when I play with John, he's going to do this thing every time. Or I know that he's going to be a jerk and block me on this particular move every time because that's the way John is. And I start to come up with these strategies because I know him and I know the game, he's going to do this, so I'm going to do this other thing. And then let's say John brings a friend to play a game. I've never played with this friend before. I don't know how they're going to react when I do a particular move on this game. Even though I've played the game a million times, someone new is entered, and I have to reconsider. I have to kind of take a step back and think about my audience again, or I have to think about my colleagues, my players again. So this can be applied directly to presentations as well. Consider your audience. By knowing your audience, even if you've given the presentation several times, it's important to reconsider and think about, okay, well, for example, the last time I gave this presentation, it was at a WordCamp. Now I'm at a Drupal camp. This is not a CMS-specific presentation, but there are a couple places, like the Austin thing I need to swap out. There's a few references I need to change. There's some stories I need to maybe update. There are things to change every time that you give a presentation. All right, so to kind of demonstrate now an evolution of slides. So when you play a board game multiple times with the same group of people, you start to anticipate how they may react and how you adapt your strategy. What would that strategy be just as effective with a new group of people? Even if presentations are the same, always consider if you're going to be presenting to new personas. Okay? You're more likely to win if you adapt your board game strategy to the group of people you're playing. When you're public speaking, adapt to your audience. All right. So now, as you can see, in this example, we're kind of progressing. We're evolving as we go. And now here's the same thing, but with the text there, and then we're back to where we started. So, like I said, this is just an example of kind of flowing into this, the process of creating your slides or kind of making your slides better by, I think a lot of people start with this one on the top here. This is our just default Pantheon, slide deck format. And it's very common to have lots and lots of text, to be very text heavy, to have, you want to get all of your points out there, but ultimately, you're reading your slides, and you are not supposed to be reading your slides. Your slides are not there for you, they're there for your audience. Your slides should not be the place where you put your notes, to kind of remind yourself where you are. Speaker notes are for that. I make good use of speaker notes, and so if you need to remind yourself to not forget a point, don't include it as a bullet on your slides for everyone to see. Put it here, and so like for the first one, I was reading my slides, and you guys were probably reading along too, because anytime you have text on the screen, it's just something we do or we read. We have to go through. So even if I'm not done with bullet point 1, you guys might be on reading to 2 or 3 and kind of coming to your own conclusions, and that's not good. So if you need to start, kind of with an outline and creating a presentation, it's totally legit to start here. Start with what you have. Start with something simple. Come up with an outline in your presentation, and then as you practice and as you improve your presentation, move it. Come up with something where it has like big text and it's a summary of your points that you're trying to make. Maybe include a clip art or a graphic or a background or something like that. But you're switching from I'm reading my slide to I'm coming up with a story. I'm coming up with examples that kind of relate to what I'm talking about. And then if you can, from this, if you have a story and you've got this thing down and you're ready to continue, you can go straight to just a graphic that kind of demonstrates your point and kind of reminds you, like, what am I talking about? Oh yeah, board games. Okay, here's my board game story. That will help get the point across. But if you need a hint, if you need a little bit more to go on, you can include also the text first. So this is a process here that we go through of simplification. It also improves readability, it improves understanding, and it helps people remember your presentations better, because telling stories is always better than reading bullet points. Anytime you can relate it to experiences, it helps other people relate it to their own experiences as well. So something to consider though, jumping back to the personas example, what if what if only John was into board games and Tessa did not like board games at all? What if I knew that my audience was not into, this example would not fly with them, it wouldn't work for them at all, then this would probably be a bad example. So Tessa likes dogs. Maybe if I think I have a dog audience here in front of me, I'd include a dog story or something with that instead. Yeah, so don't read your slides. Again, it's not, the slides are not there for you. The slides are there for your audience. So it's not there for you to read. Next point. What is the point? What is the main point of what you're trying to get at with every slide? So when you have a lot of data show like this, we have a lot of stuff that we're getting across here. A visualization, a graph, is really effective. It's really good because it gets the point across in a clear way. What if I tried to describe this to you with a story? What if I tried to describe particular data sets just by telling you what those data sets are? We're not able to hold a ton of data and just graph things in our head very easily. And so you would kind of miss the point. It'd be too much. But a graph can be really good at that. But it's really easy to miss the point on graphs. This graph here, all this stuff has a lot of information on it. There's a lot of stuff going on. And what is the point that I'm trying to make with it? And I think it's important to point out, this is a quote directly from the book, but data slides are not about the data, kind of like the slides that you're creating are not about you. It's about the meaning of the data. You're showing a slide with a graph or something to make a point. You're not just making a slide with the graphics, with the graph to share the data. You have a point that you're trying to make with it, a conclusion. And so, maybe the point is, looking at this across here, it's like, okay, well, on the weekends, we get less video traffic on our website. Less people watch our training videos. And that could be a point. Maybe it's that here that this is our, getting started is our most popular video at the time this is taken. Maybe it's that on the average, only, or the play button is only hit about, maybe 30% of the time or so, 35 or so. Maybe it's that, looking at this, the engagement over here, people only watch until about 3/4 of the way through the video before they stop and go into something else. Maybe my point is that we need to improve engagement. We need to get that to 80% or 90%. Maybe it's that we need to make people click the play button more often. Well, in this case, for this example, the point that I'm trying to make is that this video right here is a totally new format. We tried a new thing at Pantheon where we wanted to create videos that are inline in our docs site. It's a brand new video that we created, and at the time of writing this video, this is really close, it quickly rose up to be like the most popular video that we created. Seeing here, like more people play this type of video, this inline docs video, than our standalone videos that have their own pages and things like that. So there's a lot more, we can kind of theorize, there's a lot more people engaging in these videos and getting a lot more out of it. And so this is a successful video. If I was pitching this to my colleagues, I'd say, we need to do more videos like this because it has better results. But how would you have known that? If I had just shown the graph, and even if I had told you, hey, this is a really, this is the point right here. Slides often get looked at after your presentation, and if you're only saying things and not showing them here or putting them in your notes, then that point can be lost pretty easily too. It's also important to use value statements. So, why does the person that's viewing your presentation actually care? Why are they there? Kind of like the example with John and Tessa. Why would they attend my presentation? What are they getting out of it? It's important to clearly identify the problem that you're solving with your presentation, not just the features of the benefits of it. And to demonstrate the difference here, the distinction between those two, I'm going to give you a quick little example. So I could talk to you guys for hours about Pantheon and the features and how awesome Pantheon is and how great Calabox is for local development. And there's lots of features. There's lots of really cool things that I could talk about there. But ultimately, the problem that we're solving here with these two things is the process of working locally, getting developers up to speed quickly, and syncing all these things. So, I could say, instead of kind of listing out those features like I just did, I could say, man, I hate wasting time. I hate it when I have a new project and it takes me an hour to set up my local environment, to get everything just how I want it, to get all the pieces running. And then every time I make a commit or I push or pull or whatever, it takes time out of my day to do that. I would love it if I just pushed a button. Well, hey, with Calabox and Pantheon, it's a button. 5 minutes later, everything's all synced up, your website's downloaded, you can work, and it's push button. It's really quick and easy. So you're solving a problem instead of just listing a feature. Another example, Drupal 8 configuration management is, in my opinion, one of the most awesome things about Drupal 8 because, instead of telling you the feature, the reason, I've seen a trend, and I've seen this with contractors I've worked with, but also in agencies where I'm working on a feature, I'm trying to build something out, and the website might be live already. If I want to get that change I'm making up to live, I either have to do the steps I did over again. I have to redo, build a content type in the view and all those things. Or I have to overwrite the database. I have to copy my database from local or wherever I am and overwrite the live website. Both of those options are terrible because you're error prone. Maybe you lose content for the client on the live website, or you make a mistake and then the website goes down. I mean, either way, those are bad situations. To avoid those, I use Drupal 8's configuration management system to export all of my configuration to code out of the database, and then I can move that to the new environment and import it risk-free, well, mostly risk-free, without worrying about taking the database down on the website or anything like that. It's also a good idea to tell compelling stories about people. These can be about yourself or about a friend or things like that. But people in your audience, most people relate better to stories instead of just, like I said, reading bullet points or things like that. And everyone has sort of a mild curiosity about hearing a story. We've grown up over decades, over centuries of telling stories and sharing stories and learning stories and then retelling to other people. And so we're already sort of conditioned to listen and retain stories a little differently than other situations. And so you can also do things like reference case studies. Case studies are totally legit for telling compelling stories. So for an example, during the election, this last election, the ACLU saw a lot of spikes in their traffic. But the biggest spike happened on January 28th when the travel ban was instituted. On that day, the ACLU website experienced a spike of 8,500% normal traffic. Also on that day, they received 6 times their annual donations. On that single day, they received 6 times their annual donations. And their website stayed up. It scaled. It worked. It was on Pantheon. So that's a great Pantheon example. But case studies, they're emotional. When they're really good, when you have examples that are real, it can really hit home, especially if someone can relate. What if my website had a spike in traffic? Could I have, it makes you think about things in a different way. Another thing to consider is, can this be simplified? So once we know what the main point is that we're trying to make, in order to really lock down on that main point and not distract, to not cause too much noise, we want to consider simplifying our presentation. So if it's done right, simplification can really remove confusion, but by kind of honing in on the point you're trying to make. So back to this example, simplification in this case, we're removing the text, we're getting turning it into a story. It's making it easier. It's also simplifying the text because it's going to be easier to read wherever someone is. But in some cases, simplification could mean adding slides. If we have this really big point that we're trying to make, we can simplify by breaking it into smaller points and creating additional slides. Simplification could also mean removing slides. If we have a bunch of slides that aren't actually super helpful, or if it's redundant, or we think like this is a good story, but it doesn't really contribute to the point I'm trying to make, remove it. Simplify by removing or adding. And then you can't really be sure how or where or when a presentation is actually going to be regurgitated or used. So for example, is someone going to be watching this? Is it going to be up on the screen on a big TV, huge TV? Is it going to be on a projector? If you're in your office, in your conference room, do they have a projector or is it a TV? Those are important things to consider when you're thinking about colors or font size or things like that. You also have to consider, are you doing a big presentation like this, with lots of people, or live like this, or is it going to be like a webcast? Are you going to be sharing your screen and people are going to be watching? Those are 2 totally different things that you need to consider when creating a presentation, because the feedback I get from seeing you guys and watching me, and I say something and you smile, and that's like, it's good and it helps me going, you don't get that when you have a presentation online. You tell a joke and you can't tell if anyone got it, and it can be really kind of demoralizing a little bit. So you have to prepare yourself and make sure that your examples are able to be transposed or kind of work in different mediums. You also have to think about time. So I'm giving this presentation right now to you guys who are in the room live. This presentation is also being recorded, so hello everyone in the future. They will have a different experience than you guys right now, because you're here now, they're sometime, months, years, who knows, in the future. Things are different then, and it's something just to consider. Is this going to be something that is relevant only now, or will it apply later as well? And then, we talked a lot about accessibility with our websites and making sure that people, who have low vision or no vision or hearing or things, have access to our presentation or access to our website. But all of these things I just talked about are accessibility concerns too. The size of your screen, how is it being received? Making sure that your font size is appropriate and your background colors and your the text colors match and things like that. One thing that you can do to test how readable your slides are, if you need a lot of text and you want to make sure it's readable, measure your monitor. So if you have a 21-inch monitor, 21 inches, and then kind of get the tape measure, and from the monitor where it is, measure out 21 inches back. And so if you can view the text, all the text clearly from 21 inches back, then most of the people in your class, in your presentation, will be able to see it from there. So if you know that your screen is, you have a tiny screen and you know the room is very big, then you have to take those things into consideration when how big should your font be, what colors should I use, links and things like that. But then there are other accessibility concerns you need to take into factor too. There's lots of good reading in the book I referenced earlier, Slideology, can give you some good pointers on that. And lastly, what can we do to actually make the presentation engaging, to keep people interested, to get them interactive in the presentation? Because anytime that we can keep it engaging, it makes the points click. It makes it something that will stick with them, so they think about it later, and the next time they're presenting, and the next time, and the next time. They'll remember those stories, they'll remember the time that you did something special. So raise your hand real quick if you've ever attended a session where a presenter did a hand poll. Yeah, so everyone, great, excellent. So John did it twice, yeah. It can be a really good way. Just a quick little hand poll. Lots of people do it at the beginning. If they're giving a presentation on Drupal, maybe they say, what version of Drupal are you using? If you're doing Drupal 7, Drupal 8, you've probably seen something like that. Who here is who here is a developer, a themer, a project, things like that. It helps you understand who your audience is so you can kind of tailor the examples on the fly. But it also helps people to get engaged a little bit too. It helps them to pay attention. Like if you think that you might be called on, you're going to pay way more attention than if you think I'm just going to be on my computer, on my email, I'm doing other things. And so if you pay more attention, you're going to get more out of the presentation. So you're helping your audience get more out of it too. Another thing that someone pointed out to me after the last time I did this was when you do a poll, like you raise your hand, say raise your hand if you're a developer. Let's do it real quick. If you're a developer, raise your hand. Okay, so there's a few people, and there's a few people who aren't. The people who are developers have an opportunity to see that there are other people just like them in the room at the time. They don't feel alone. They feel like, oh, there's a few other people like me. Okay, cool, and that helps them to feel more comfortable that they're where they're supposed to be, and that the points are they can reach out and ask someone for help if they need to. You can also ask for suggestions. Does anyone here have any suggestions that they'd like to share for giving better presentations? Yes, Andrew.
Do a dry run with someone and get feedback ahead of time.
Yes, that's great feedback. Anything else? Okay, no problem. But so any opportunity that you have to interact with your audience is a good thing. There's lots of audiences, or there's lots of presentations where you're just presenting, you're speaking, it's one directional. Anytime that you can interact, it makes the presentation way more interesting, I think. And then asking for a story can be really good. Tessa, do you have a story you'd like to share?
Yeah, so I think asking for stories is good. Like, I do a lot of Drupal development class teaching, and in the room, like, we all kind of went around and we're talking about, like, our experience and, like, how we got it, why we wanted to be there. So in this case, it was, like, intro level, like, HTML. And so I actually expressed the fact that, like, I'm self-taught. Like, it can be done. Like, you can figure out how to become a developer. And then people kind of went around the room, and it was really nice for others to be like, hey, I'm a project manager, or I'm a graphic designer, or maybe I'm a biologist, and allow people to like be able to relate to the fact that they're all different. And it helped everyone else to just feel more comfortable with each other, as well as kind of relating to one another.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so, yeah, John.
Oh, okay, so I have a story / suggestion.
Yeah, go for it.
The hybrid of the two, I guess, last thing. I'd say, I think you touched on it a little bit before, and basically just like kind of be freeform and go with whatever the flow is. I do a lot of like community like moderation of stuff where I'm from, like for Drupal community stuff, for Comic-Con stuff, things like that. And a lot of times when there's a session or a panel or something like that, I feel like I see like there's a lot of people who are like, this is how it's going to go, and as soon as it deviates from that, it's just deer in headlights time. But there's a lot of things where like right now we haven't been engaging with David very much, probably because it's the last day and it's still pretty early. It's still really early for me at least. But there's some other panels, I'm sure, or sessions that I'm sure you guys have seen it, where people want to actively engage, and for the speaker to adjust to that and just work that, incorporate that into the presentation. Makes it a lot better, because that person's probably going to be like, that person that's really excited is going to be disrupted anyways. So if you just roll with the punch, things go a lot smoother rather than getting knocked in the face, and that it's kind of just like really weird and awkward for everybody.
Yeah, it's a great story. Thank you. I appreciate that. Exactly. Stories like that help engagement, certainly. It also helps me because I can take things that have been said and shared by the audience and use it to make my presentation even better, like in the future, but then also on the fly. And then it helps you guys as well. So I really like asking for stories. We do some like technical trainings with agencies where we'll go and teach them how to use Pantheon and stuff. And we'll ask them, it's like, what are some situations where, what does your workflow look like? What are some horror stories about your workflow that you have right now? And just asking them to share their experience gives us a chance to say, okay, well, here's the pain I see. Let's spend some time on those things and kind of dig in deeper on those areas instead of just generically, here's the agenda that we have for today. It helps make it a lot more personal, a lot more appropriate. And then, of course, in this case, if you can talk to your audience in advance, if you know you're going to have a big presentation like this, and kind of see if there are any good stories that you could ask people to share. So I talked to Tessa beforehand and asked, prepared her that I was going to be asking for a story. It helps avoid the awkwardness of like, hey, does anyone have a story? Nope. Okay, cool. Let's keep going. And then it also gives them a chance to prepare like a good story. So anytime you can prepare, spend the time before your presentation going and talking to people, not just kind of standing here awkwardly behind the podium. And then, something that's kind of interesting, psychologically, we are conditioned to answer any question we're asked subconsciously. So, for example, how would you think that a presentation like this would change your job? How would delivering really good, rock solid presentations improve your confidence? Like, I just asked you a couple questions. I didn't ask for an answer. No one shouted out or anything. But whenever we are asked a question, even if it's just written, even if we don't even if I don't say it out loud, we answer it inside, whether we think we do or not, subconsciously. And so that's kind of a cool thing, like, getting your audience to think about it in relation to themselves. But then also, it helps them to really apply the things that you're saying to their lives. Instead of just being like, yeah, these are great facts, like, yeah, these are great tidbits, great presentation, I appreciate, or whatever. But without actually leaving the room and affecting them, actually causing change. So by asking questions, by relating it to their life and their job and their things that they're interested in, it really helps it sink in and make a difference. And so it's really good to look into the mirror. This is a photo I took in one of those big round mirrors, but it's good to consider the things you can fix, after every presentation. It's good to be a little bit retrospective and look into your presentation, look into yourself. What are some things you'd fix next time and improve? So personally, I know there's a whole bunch of things I can improve about this presentation. One thing that I had on my list last time that I fixed, I didn't have a clicker. I got a clicker. I'm still kind of corralled. I'm over here by this podium, which I shouldn't be. I should probably be somewhere else and away, and I can move around and use my arms and stuff. But I did fix one thing that I called myself out on last time. I do have a problem with trigger words. I know I say a lot of uhs and likes and but, things like that. It's a good idea to try to be super self-conscious of those and remove them if you can from your presentations, because they can be really distracting to people. That's one of the things that the Toastmasters can help you with, because you'll have someone whose job it is to tally every trigger word that you have, and then at the end they'll tell you how many you had, and you can listen to recordings of yourself and do that for yourself and keep track of that to help yourself improve.
I have a question.
Yes?
When would you recommend getting to that point? I mean, I feel like if I'm not presenting very often, if it's not something I do often enough to be, I'm not going to go join Toastmasters, but is it okay to just be like, okay, I know I have this problem and I'm just going to do it anyway? And
Sure, of course.
I just feel like it's too distracting to try to.
So
You're starting off.
So I do that a lot. I don't know if you could tell from the way that I talk, or that might have to do with, like, I grew up in Southern California, so dude, like, it's just kind of like, it happens. But when I'm up there and I'm actively, like, being the host or MC or whatever for something, something that I do to mitigate against it is I actively try to make myself speak slower and enunciate, because it gives me more time to think about the next thing that's going to come out of my mouth. And it's not like it's an inordinate amount of time, but you know, it does, like.
So slowing down rather than thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to accidentally say and then just.
Instead of sprint and then so where do I run to next? And then it's just like,
Right.
oh, this is a nice brisk walk through my presentation.
Another thing that I find helpful for that is like, usually when you say you're searching for the next word, just like focus on saying nothing while you think of the next thing to say.
That's true. Saying nothing can be better than saying a filler word, for sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, and that's a really great point though too. I didn't mean that to make you feel super self-conscious, because that's taking away from the point also. It's more retrospective when you think back. If you're conscious of it, sometimes you can control it, but if not, just slowing down is a really great suggestion.
I think it's a level or point where, like, you know, if you go to the gym and someone's just like, oh yeah, the form on your curls is all wrong, and I'm just like, hey, I'm doing curls, man, like that's good for me, and that's good enough. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. Just getting up there and doing it, and like I think over time, like anything else.
Definitely. Yeah, I mentioned listening to a recording of yourself. I've given this presentation once before, and I had it on my list of things to do this week to listen to my presentation again and to kind of prepare, and I haven't. That's something I personally think would improve my own presentation, just hearing myself present, finding the mistakes that I make, the stories that I like, well, that sounds weird hearing it from the other side. There are some things that I can improve by doing that. I also know, so at Pantheon we had someone come in, I don't know what you'd call, like a coach, I guess, someone who helps with presentations and makes suggestions on public speaking and things like that. And we presented, and they recorded us, and then we have the recording so we can watch ourselves present. And it was on the fly, come up with a presentation in 15 minutes, not slides, but just spoken presentation. In 15 minutes, we're going to present all of our talks, all 5 of us individually, and then we'll score and we'll talk and give feedback and stuff. And that was really cool, really good for us. But one of the things I noticed from watching my video is when I talk, I shift back and forth. I'm moving around. I'm doing this a lot, and it can be distracting to some people. And if you watch it on the video, it's like this, and it's distracting for me now. So being aware of that and trying, I don't have to be like locked in my position, but being deliberate about not just popping back and forth during my presentation. And then, of course, just getting more practice would be good. So again, part of this presentation's point is encouraging you to create better presentations, but also to feel encouraged to get out there and present, to find opportunities to speak about a topic that you're interested in and passionate about, whatever it is. So it's not difficult to find a venue where you can speak, be it something on meetup.org or at work or somewhere. There is somewhere where people would like to hear what you have to say. Like, for example, Texas Camp next year. Everyone here should feel like they have the right, the privilege, whatever, to apply to speak at Texas Camp next year, to give a few suggestions for presentations, because that's really good, a really good way to get speaking experience. And it's also really good for the Drupal community or whatever community you're contributing to as well. All right, so that's all I have for today. Thank you very much. Any questions? Yes.
So you said like you watch your video after listen to it, and I found it myself I can't, because when I start to hear my voice outside on the recording, it sounds absolutely terrible. And it's like, how I can't stand that, I just click off and just like, oh, I hope I will not hear that again from outside.
Right.
How do we deal with this? Because I think everybody hears themselves like.
Sure. So I shared the story at the beginning about how my voice was really strange. And it's one of those things where I didn't hear what it sounds like to everyone else until I heard it on a recording. And it bothered me a lot. I could not listen to it either. I don't know if my situation is probably not applicable to yours, but once I jumped ahead, I didn't share like the conclusion, but I jumped ahead and I got over it and things are better now. I speak a little more normally. And I don't have, like I kind of got over that. Like when I got over that for that thing, it made it so I could listen to myself be recorded too. So what about other people? What do you have problems listening to yourself on tape?
Yeah, I do personally. There are presentations I've given that I have not watched. It's like a door, I don't know if I'm ready to open yet and look at the mess and see what to fix.
Mm-hmm. But it's, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. But do you guys have any suggestions for that?
I think some of it is it's kind of mental, and it's something that you talked about earlier with being like hypersensitive and hyper-aware stuff. So I have really weird acute hearing where like certain things like bug me, and I hear weird pitches and tones, and so when you hear yourself, I think part of it is when you hear yourself talk, you're just like, that's not me, right? Where it's just like people are like, oh yeah, that's totally you, right? But like it's something where like if I listen to this recording of this presentation, I will probably, the David that sounds that I hear on the presentation is not the same as the David that's up there right now. I recognize it enough to be like, that is David talking, that is a recording of David talking. But but it's not actually the same for me as listening to him in person. So I think maybe if you think of it that way, for like the recording, it sounds horrible to you because it's not you, and you recognize that it's not you. But it's the same way for everybody. Like, you know, the me that pops up in this is not going to be the me that you hear right now. It's not going to be the David. But you're just more sensitive about it because it's you, and you're just like, what happened to me? It's the same thing to everybody else. So maybe that's something to.
Yeah, the point is like, for me, it's also because I have the accent, obviously, and they don't hear it. That's the problem. Like people say, oh, you have the accent. It's like, to me, I'm like repeating the same as like if I was learning English and I heard the word like question and I repeat it as like question. To me, it sounds perfectly as the guy said, like, you know, in tutorial. Now people say, you have an accent, and I don't hear it from inside my head, thankfully, otherwise I wouldn't be able to talk at all. But when I hear it on recording, it's like, oh my God, this is a disaster. And I'm like, you know, like I can't overcome it. Like, do everybody else hear me like that? This is terrible. And then I can't force myself to, like, I can force myself to present. I can just not think about all the millions of people who can reach to the recording. But when I'm actually sitting at the recording, it's like a torture. I can't really run from myself. It's just like I can't stand that. That's so bad.
If it's any consolation, it doesn't seem like anybody who's here has trouble understanding you or anything. So again, it might be just something that you're sensitive to because you're more aware of it when you're listening to it in retrospect. And then if you're like up where David is right now too, and you're speaking, you'll see if people are like, wait, what? And then they're from there. If you go back and review a recording, then you can like maybe remember back to that and see like what could I have done better here? Should I speak slower? Should I try to enunciate? Maybe there's like, this is like super a lot of work but you know, it's just like I can use different word choices. There are different ways of explaining things where I can maybe simplify or use different vocabulary that might assist with things like that.
There may also be some resources on presenting as a non-native English speaker. I was at a conference recently for technical writing, and there was a presentation there on writing for non-English speakers that really kind of put that at the front of my, I guess, like mind during the documentation process. It's not something I'd necessarily thought about before. So I'm sure there's probably some resources that can give specific tips for non-native English speakers while they're presenting.
I think another thing that can help you with that is just like good slides. So like my wife, she watches Murdoch Mysteries on Netflix. Do you know what that is?
Oh yeah.
It's like, okay, all right. So it's like Victorian era like murder mysteries, right? But they've got people that speak like this on the show, and then she's just like, I have no idea what those people are saying. But so she just reads the subtitles, right? But sometimes she's sort of lazy, or like she'll watch it off of totally reputable sites that are not illegal at all, but they don't have subtitles, and then like it's enough that like there's enough going on where she can see things where she's just like, I have no idea what you just said, but I understand what you're trying to convey. And so that's something that could help you too, I think. If you feel like you're conscious about like, hey, this is like, maybe it's not coming across in my verbalization of this. But I look at the slide and I can see, oh, that said was Catan. I hate that game. But like, I get what you're talking about.
I've never listened to myself except for one time, and because that time I was so nervous that my voice got higher and higher pitched as the presentation went on.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just a really bad presentation, really long time ago. I think I'm better now, but I will not listen to myself.
Did you notice that you went up as you were presenting?
No, not while I was presenting.
See, that's the reason why it's good to watch yourself, because there are all sorts of things you do that you're not even aware of when you're doing it on the fly.
Sometimes when I am speaking, I'll definitely do the same thing, but I do notice it as it's happening, and that makes it almost like happen worse and worse. It's like a snowball effect. But like what you mentioned, I think at the beginning of the talk, about how you're not necessarily, like people won't notice things the way that you imagine that they will.
Right.
So
Yeah, like,
removing yourself from being so, I guess, like exposed, you don't have to feel like too self-aware or self-conscious.
Well, it's kind of like though listening. When I played trombone, I listened to myself play, and it helped me to refine and improve, my airflow, and I need to breathe here and stuff like that. It's a way of improving, even though no one noticed my mistake. It helps me become a better, trombone player over time. Yeah. So both are true at the same time. Yeah.
I was just gonna, there's, this is a different topic, but Amy Cuddy did a TED talk on your body and your being bigger, and that helped. That was I did listen to that. That gave me a lot more confidence getting up in front of people. So I just wanted to share that.
That's an incredible TED talk, and she also has a book called Presence where she talks about it in length.
Yeah,
It's very good.
Well, you were talking, I thought of it, and then I looked it up, and I actually didn't know her name, so I Googled TED Talk, make yourself bigger.
Yeah.
It was like,
And there's like psychology around it just, listen to her talk. She will explain it much better than I can. It's good. Good suggestion.
CUDDY.
Right. Writing that down. Make yourself bigger.
Yeah, for the increasing pitch of the stuff that you guys are talking about, I think people underestimate or overestimate the amount that people like. If you just take a second to like recalibrate yourself and like kind of like the deep breath thing, to just like to stop that increasing pitch, the like rise of your voice, you know it, right? And if that's something where it's just like just like deep breath and like that pause does a lot for you. No one else in the room notices.
Yeah.
No one else in the room notices that you're doing that.
So I always, every time I get up in front of people and speak like you have, I always apologize. At some point in my, what is that? I'm always, I have to say, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm not very comfortable. And then I can go on with my presentation.
Yeah.
I have to like tell everybody there that I'm not happy being here.
Sure. Yeah, I'd say you don't have to apologize. Just
Anyway.
Yeah, if it's what you need to do to get through your presentation, but that's what's right for you.
Yeah.
But all I would say is you don't necessarily have to do that to feel bad and stuff. Again, because no one notices. No one notices. And no one. There are a lot of people who won't know that it's something to apologize for until you point it out.
Right.
Right.
They say it before. Like, oops, I made a mistake there. No one knows. No one knows we're supposed to say that thing in that slide.
So you do not do it.
One thing, David, I think you did this at the beginning that I've found that really helps me to kind of normalize the situation. It's more difficult to do when you're doing a webinar, but even if you can come in and talk to people, like just interact with everyone beforehand, I feel like my voice is already at like a normal, even keel, and it's just like I'm having a conversation. Rather than you're getting up there and you're fidgeting, and then your voice just comes out and you're like, that doesn't sound anything like me, or what pitch is this? And then you just kind of get nervous and kind of clam up a little bit. But if you can just kind of interact ahead of time with everybody, it's like you're just continuing the conversation, but you're at the front of the room. That's the only difference.
It also breaks down the barrier between me and them, and I need to get it perfect, and it gives you a chance to get to know your audience and really kind of chill out a little bit.
It's like you're a human up there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you have any tips for ways to stay present during a presentation? Like
Don't leave the
staying
room.
actively just like in the right mindset and not being too consumed with my voice is this, am I doing this, or
So
people are talking.
one of the things that that book, the Slideology, and one of the other ones that they wrote, she actually wrote, Nancy Durate, I think, wrote a couple other ones like Illuminate and Resonate, all about like storytelling and things like that. And storytelling basically is how I was able to switch from bullet points on a slide to I'm getting my point across without getting lost and being very casual. Because if I see a photo that helps, that's my hint. I know what the story is. I'm just sharing a story, which is much more natural and easy. It's not like I need to get through these points. I'm just sharing something that happened in my life.
Yeah.
It's much more natural for me.
The inner dialogue kind of quiets down.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you.
Uh,